"The dog isn't attacking him," Commander Lena Mercer whispered. "He's warning us." Under the red emergency lights of Blackridge Forward Station, Frost looked less like a dog and more like a pale ghost that had stepped out of the desert. His white coat glowed against the canvas walls of the classified medical tent, every strand lifted along his shoulders, every muscle held perfectly still. One front paw rested against Staff Sergeant Isaiah Brooks's chest. The other pinned a clear plastic line to the floor, stopping the liquid that had been flowing toward the Marine's arm only seconds earlier. Around them, the tent hummed with restrained panic. Medical monitors chirped. Boots shifted across the rubber matting. Sand tapped against the canvas in dry, nervous bursts as the wind moved over the Nevada flats. 3 security Marines stood near the entrance, their hands ready but uncertain. None of them wanted to hurt Frost. None of them understood why one of the most disciplined K-9s in the unit had torn through a restricted barrier, shouldered past 2 guards, and leaped onto a treatment table where his handler lay unconscious. Gunnery Sergeant Owen Tate took one careful step forward. Frost did not look at him. The dog's amber eyes remained fixed on the hanging medical bag above Isaiah. "Easy, Frost," Owen said, his voice low enough to calm a frightened animal, though Frost was not frightened. That was what unsettled him. Frost was thinking, watching, measuring. The dog lowered his head and drew 2 slow breaths through his nose. Then he froze. Isaiah lay beneath a thin olive blanket, his dark face damp with sweat, his breathing shallow but steady. 12 hours earlier, he had walked into the station on his own feet after a desert reconnaissance patrol. There had been no visible injury, no sign of heat stroke, no reason for a man built like Isaiah Brooks to fold beside the communications trailer without warning. Yet now he rested beneath the red light with a line taped to his arm and a medical team struggling to understand why his body was failing. Dr. Victor Sloan stood on the opposite side of the table, one hand still raised from where the dog had knocked him back. His white coat was spotless. His expression was not. "Remove that animal," he said. "We are losing time." Frost's ears turned toward the sound, but his gaze never left the bag. A single drop gathered at the end of the disconnected tube. It trembled beneath the light, clear as rainwater, harmless to any human eye. Then it fell. The drop struck the black floor mat with a soft click that no one should have heard over the monitors and the wind. Frost recoiled. Not far. Only 6 inches. But everyone saw it. His lips tightened. His nose lifted. A low sound rolled through his chest. Not a bark, not a threat, but the same deep warning Isaiah had learned never to ignore. Commander Mercer looked down at the fallen drop, then up at the bag. "What exactly is in that line?" she asked. Sloane's jaw hardened. "A stabilized plasma compound. Project Haven. You know that. I know what the label says." Lena moved closer, careful not to disturb Frost. The air inside the tent carried the familiar smells of antiseptic, warm canvas, dust, and electrical heat. Beneath them was something else. Faint, sweet, metallic, so slight that it vanished whenever she tried to find it. Frost found it every time. Owen reached for the dog's collar. Frost shifted his body between the hand and Isaiah, still without snapping, still without looking away from the medical bag. "He crossed 2 checkpoints to get here," Owen murmured. "He has never broken a command in 6 years." Sloane glanced toward the doorway. "Then tonight is the first." Another drop formed at the end of the tube. Frost watched it swell. His breathing stopped. So did Lena's. The drop fell, and the dog stepped back again, placing his white body over Isaiah's arm as though shielding him from something no one else could see. Then Isaiah's fingers moved beneath the blanket. His eyelids opened only a fraction. He saw Frost first. A tired recognition passed through his face. His lips parted, but the words were barely louder than the sand against the tent. "Not him," Isaiah whispered. His eyes drifted toward the hanging bag. "That." The monitor beside him changed its rhythm. Lena reached for the clamp. Sloane reached for her wrist. Frost raised his head, and for the first time that night, everyone in the tent understood that the white K-9 had not broken in to reach his Marine. He had broken in to stop whatever was already trying to reach him. 12 hours earlier, the desert had been quiet enough to hear the wind combing through the wire fence around Blackridge Forward Station. Dawn had not yet broken, but a thin silver glow rested along the eastern ridge, turning the Nevada flats into a wide field of shadow and dust. Staff Sergeant Isaiah Brooks walked through the outer gate with Frost beside him, both carrying the silence of men returning from a mission that had asked too much and explained too little. Isaiah was 35, tall and broad through the shoulders, with close-cropped black hair and a calm face that younger Marines trusted before he ever spoke. Dust covered his boots and clung to the sleeves of his field uniform. His dark skin shone faintly with sweat beneath the security lights, though the morning air was still cool. Frost moved close to his left leg, a white German shepherd against the gray desert, his pale coat marked with streaks of sand from the night patrol. He should have been tired. Instead, his ears stayed high, and his amber eyes moved from the fuel tanks to the communications trailer, then toward the line of refrigerated vehicles parked near the medical compound. Isaiah felt the dog slow. "We are home," he said quietly. Frost did not look at him. Near the third vehicle, a civilian technician was unloading sealed medical cases onto a metal cart. Cold vapor slipped from the truck whenever the rear door opened, curling into the dry air before disappearing. The cases bore no ordinary supply markings, only a black symbol and the words Project Haven. Isaiah had seen the name once in a briefing and had been told to forget it. He kept walking. Frost did not. The dog stopped near a shallow trail of water beneath the vehicle, lowered his head, and drew 2 careful breaths. Then his entire body became still. It was not fear. It was not confusion. Isaiah knew that posture. One paw lifted slightly from the ground. Frost inhaled again, slower this time, and lowered his muzzle until it almost touched the dark stain beneath the truck. "Leave it," Isaiah said. Frost obeyed, but only after turning his head toward the nearest medical case. Gunnery Sergeant Owen Tate approached from the security office with a paper cup of coffee in one hand. "Long night?" he asked. "Long enough," Isaiah replied. Owen looked down at Frost. "He find something?" Isaiah watched the cart disappear behind the restricted gate. "Probably coolant from the refrigeration unit." The answer sounded reasonable. Frost looked back at the truck, unconvinced. A dull pressure tightened beneath Isaiah's ribs. He placed a hand against his side and waited for it to pass. They had spent 8 hours checking an abandoned relay station 40 miles north, where faulty sensors had reported movement along a service road. There had been no intruders, no damaged equipment, and no clear reason for command to send them before sunrise. Only an empty structure, stale air, and a sharp chemical smell that had lingered near a locked storage room. Frost had reacted there too. Isaiah had reported it. The response had been simple. The site was outside his clearance. He was told to return to base. "You all right?" Owen asked. Isaiah lowered his hand. "Did not sleep enough." He took 3 more steps before the ground seemed to tilt beneath him. The lights above the gate stretched into pale lines. Frost pressed against his leg, steadying him. Isaiah reached for the dog's harness, but his fingers missed. He heard Owen call his name from somewhere far away. Then his knees met the dust, gently at first, as though the desert had risen to catch him. Frost moved in front of him and began nosing beneath his left arm, searching his ribs, his chest, his breath. Isaiah tried to speak. Only a thin exhale came out. Within seconds, boots surrounded them. Commander Lena Mercer arrived from the medical compound, her dark blue uniform partly covered by an open field coat. She knelt beside Isaiah and checked his pulse. "His heart rate is dropping," she said. "Get a stretcher." Frost remained against Isaiah until 2 corpsmen lifted him. When they carried him toward the restricted tent, the dog followed. Owen caught Frost by the harness before he reached the inner gate. "You cannot go in there, boy." Frost pulled once, not toward Isaiah, but toward the cart carrying the Project Haven cases. One container had been left beside the tent entrance. Moisture gathered along its lower edge and fell into the sand. Frost stared at the drop. He inhaled twice. His head lowered. The same signal. The same silence. Then the tent flap closed, hiding Isaiah from view. And for the first time since returning to Blackridge, Frost let out a low, troubled sound that seemed less like a warning than a memory waking up. Frost remained beside the restricted gate long after Isaiah disappeared behind the canvas wall. The white German shepherd did not pace. He did not bark. He simply stood with his head lowered and his eyes fixed on the damp corner of the medical case. Owen Tate had seen Frost search buildings, trace footprints across rock, and find hidden equipment beneath layers of dust. He had never seen him stare at a single drop of water as if it carried a voice from the past. "Come on, boy," Owen said softly. You did your part. Frost did not move. The wind pushed sand across the concrete in thin ribbons. Somewhere inside the medical tent, a monitor began to sound in a steady rhythm. The noise reached Frost through canvas, metal, and distance. One ear turned toward it. The rest of him stayed pointed at the case. 18 months earlier, Isaiah had seen the same posture in a place where the air had smelled wrong. It had been a temporary supply station beyond the edge of a dry valley overseas, a low concrete building surrounded by sun-bleached barriers and rows of sealed containers. Staff Sergeant Isaiah Brooks had entered with Frost and Corporal Caleb Reed just before noon. Caleb was 29, lean, quick to smile, and forever carrying a folded photograph of his little daughter inside the front pocket of his uniform. He called Frost the quietest Marine in the unit, though Frost answered only to Isaiah. The assignment had sounded ordinary. Check a storage room. Confirm the inventory. Report anything unusual. Inside, the air was cool and stale. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Frost moved ahead of them, his white coat almost silver beneath the weak ceiling lamps. Near the rear wall, he stopped. One paw lifted. He breathed in twice. Then he lowered his head. Isaiah noticed, but the handheld detector in his palm showed nothing. No warning light. No alarm. No reason to halt the inspection. What is it? Caleb asked. Isaiah checked the screen again. Probably old cleaning solvent. Frost stayed frozen. Caleb looked at the dog, then at Isaiah. He does not like it. The equipment is clear. Isaiah heard the confidence in his own voice and trusted it because confidence was what Marines were taught to carry when uncertainty entered the room. He gave Frost the command to move. The dog obeyed, but slowly, looking back at the sealed cabinet near the wall. 10 minutes later, Caleb began to feel weak. At first, he blamed the heat outside. Then his balance failed. Isaiah called for medical support, but the nearest team was miles away. Frost pressed his nose against Caleb's sleeve, then returned to the cabinet and gave the same silent signal. By the time help arrived, the hidden leak had already done its work. Caleb never returned to duty. The official report used careful language. Equipment failure. Undetected exposure. No fault assigned. Isaiah read those words until they meant nothing. He remembered only Frost standing still beneath the white lights, asking to be believed without making a sound. After that day, Isaiah stopped treating the signal as an instinct. It became a promise. 2 breaths. 1 lifted paw. The lowered head. Whenever Frost showed it, Isaiah listened. Every time. Until that morning at Blackridge, when exhaustion and routine had made him look away for 1 second too long. Outside the medical tent, Frost finally shifted. He walked to the place where Isaiah had fallen and lowered his nose to the dust. From there, he followed the scent trail toward the stretcher path, then turned sharply toward the refrigerated truck instead of the tent. Owen watched him move between the tire marks and the loading area. Frost stopped beside the narrow stream of melted condensation beneath the rear axle. 2 breaths. 1 lifted paw. Head down. Owen felt the coffee cup grow cold in his hand. That is not coolant, is it? He whispered. Frost looked toward him, then back at the medical cases. A civilian technician emerged from the truck carrying another sealed container. The man glanced at Frost and quickened his pace. Frost followed at the end of the security line, silent and controlled. He did not pull toward the man. He did not react to the uniform, the gloves, or the badge. His attention stayed on the container. Owen called the medical desk from his radio. Commander Mercer, I need you to check the new shipment before you use anything from it. A pause followed. Then Lena answered, her voice tight. We are already preparing a transfusion. Owen looked down at Frost. The dog stood perfectly still, facing the tent. From inside came the faint clink of metal, the rustle of plastic, and the sound of someone opening a sealed bag. Frost inhaled once. Then again, his head lowered. And Owen understood that whatever had followed Isaiah home from the desert was no longer outside the gate. It was already in the room with him. Inside the medical tent, Commander Lena Mercer held the radio close to her ear while watching the clear bag being lifted from its insulated case. Say that again, she said. Owen Tate stood outside the restricted gate with Frost beside him, the desert wind scraping sand across his boots. The dog is not tracking Isaiah, Owen answered. He is tracking the shipment. Lena looked toward Dr. Victor Sloan. He was removing his gloves from a sealed packet with the calm precision of a man who disliked being questioned. The silver badge clipped to his coat identified him as the civilian director of Project Haven, though the title explained very little about why a classified medical program had been moved into a temporary station miles from the nearest town. "What shipment?" Sloan asked. Lena lowered the radio. "The one you brought through that door." For the first time, his hands paused, only for a breath. Then he resumed his work. The plasma compound came from a controlled facility in California. Every container was inspected before transport. Frost reacted to the truck. "Frost is a dog." The words were quiet, almost polite, but something in the way Sloan said them made Lena look at him more carefully. Isaiah lay beneath the olive blanket, his face still and his pulse weak beneath the monitor lead. The air smelled of antiseptic and warm canvas, but a colder scent lingered near the case, faint enough to be dismissed and sharp enough to return whenever Lena turned away. Outside, Frost began to move. The security gate opened to admit another medical cart, and Sloan stepped through the inner barrier to meet it. Frost followed at the length of Owen's grip. His amber eyes settled on Sloan. A low sound stirred in his chest. Two guards shifted closer. Owen tightened his hand around the harness. "Easy." Sloan stopped beside the cart. "Control your animal." Frost took one step forward. Sloan took one step back. It was small, almost invisible, but Owen saw it. So did Lena through the narrow opening in the tent flap. The wind lifted the edge of Sloan's coat, revealing a ring of keys, an access card, and a narrow silver case secured beneath his arm. Frost raised his nose. He inhaled once, then again. His ears angled forward. Everyone waited for him to lunge toward the man. He did not. Sloan moved left. Frost's gaze stayed on the silver case. Sloan moved right. Frost's head followed the case again. Owen slowly released some tension from the harness. "He is not looking at you," he said. Sloan glanced down. Frost stared at the container pressed against his side. "What is in that?" Owen asked. "Support materials." "Open it." Sloan's expression cooled. "You do not have clearance." "Then tell me why a trained detection dog thinks it belongs near a warning marker." "Because the dog is confused." Frost stepped sideways as Sloan handed the silver case to a technician. The moment it left his body, Frost stopped watching him. His attention moved with the case. The technician carried it toward the tent. Frost followed. Owen felt something settle in his chest. Not relief, but understanding. "He does not care about Sloan," he said into the radio. "He cares about what Sloan is carrying." Lena looked at the clear bag hanging beside Isaiah. The same black Project Haven symbol appeared on its label. She checked the storage seal, then the batch number. Sloan entered behind the technician and closed the flap against the wind. "We cannot keep delaying," he said. "Staff Sergeant Brooks is deteriorating." "Then give me the transport log." It was already reviewed. "By whom?" "By my office." Lena met his eyes. "That is not what I asked." Silence collected inside the tent. The monitor continued its careful rhythm. Sloan set the silver case on the table and unlocked it. Inside were additional plasma bags packed in white insulation. Cold vapor curled over the edges. Frost watched from outside through the narrow gap beneath the canvas. His body remained still, but his nose worked steadily. Lena lifted the first bag and turned it toward the light. Nothing appeared wrong. No clouding. No discoloration. The seal looked clean. The label matched Isaiah's file. "Commander," Sloan said, "this compound may be the only reason he survives the next hour." Lena studied the transport record on the tablet. Every temperature reading was within range. Every checkpoint was marked complete. Then she noticed a gap. 6 minutes had disappeared between the arrival of the truck and the final cold storage confirmation. Not an error message. Not a failed reading. Just empty space where data should have been. "What happened here?" she asked. Sloan looked at the screen and answered too quickly. "A system reset." Outside, the technician lifted another bag from the silver case. Frost moved with it, ignoring Sloan completely. Owen watched the dog track the plastic, not the hands holding it. The suspicion in the room changed shape. The danger was no longer a man standing beside Isaiah. It was something sealed, labeled, approved, and already waiting to enter his body. Lena placed the bag back on the table. Frost lowered his head. 2 breaths. 1 lifted paw. Silence. Then Sloan reached for the line and said, "Begin the transfusion." Lena did not move. Her hand rested above the clamp while the clear line hung between the bag and Isaiah's arm. The monitor beside him kept a slow, uneven rhythm, each tone separated by just enough silence to make the tent feel smaller. Begin the transfusion, Sloan repeated. At a reduced rate, Lena said. And I want the backup line ready. Sloan's eyes narrowed, but he stepped aside. A corpsman connected the tubing and opened the flow one careful turn at a time. The first drops traveled downward, bright under the red emergency lamps, then disappeared into the line taped to Isaiah's skin. Outside, Frost stopped pulling against Owen. The sudden stillness unsettled him more than any struggle could have. The white German shepherd sat beside the gate with his front paws square beneath him, ears raised, eyes fixed on the tent. You were fighting a minute ago, Owen murmured. Frost did not blink. Inside, Lena watched Isaiah's numbers. His pulse remained weak, but after 30 seconds the rhythm began to steady. His oxygen level rose by 1 point, then another. The tension in the room loosened. One of the corpsmen released a breath he had been holding. Sloan folded his arms. There, he said. The compound is working. Lena did not answer. She looked at the tablet again, returning to the 6 missing minutes in the transport log. Everything before the gap was normal. Everything after it was perfect. Too perfect. The temperature readings resumed at exactly the expected level, without the gradual cooling that should have followed a system reset. Who had custody of the shipment during the outage? She asked. The transport team. Names. This is not the time. A Marine is lying on my table. It is exactly the time. Sloan leaned closer, lowering his voice. Commander, you were brought into Project Haven because you understand emergency medicine. Let me handle the administrative side. Lena looked at him without expression. I understand that missing data is not administrative when it is attached to something entering a patient. Outside, the wind strengthened. Canvas snapped against its supports. Fine sand slipped beneath the edge of the tent and moved across the floor in pale threads. Frost's nose lifted. He inhaled once, then turned his head toward the insulated case near the entrance. Owen followed the dog's gaze. A faint bead of moisture had formed at the corner of the case. It rolled down the metal surface and fell into the dust. Frost stood. He did not bark. He did not strain. He simply moved to the end of the leash and lowered his head. 2 breaths. 1 lifted paw. Owen raised the radio. Commander Mercer, he is signaling again. Lena looked toward the flap. At what? The case. Sloan shook his head. The dog has already reacted to the entire shipment. That tells us nothing. It tells us he is consistent, Owen said. Frost's attention shifted from the case to the tent wall, following the path of the tubing on the other side, as though he could see through the canvas. The dog sat again. His body was motionless, but his breathing had changed. Slow. Measured. Waiting. The first 5 minutes passed. Isaiah's pulse improved. His breathing deepened. Color began to return to his face. Sloan allowed himself a small nod. You see, he said. Whatever happened on patrol, this is reversing it. Lena placed 2 fingers against Isaiah's wrist. The beat was stronger. For one brief moment, hope entered the tent quietly, almost shyly. Then Isaiah's eyelids moved. His eyes opened halfway and searched the room without focus. Staff Sergeant Brooks, Lena said. Can you hear me? His gaze found her, then drifted toward the hanging bag. His brow tightened. Frost, he whispered. He is outside, Lena replied. Isaiah swallowed. His voice came thin and dry. What did you give me? A plasma compound. His eyes remained on the bag. Something passed across his face. Not fear. Recognition. He drew in a shallow breath through his nose and winced as if a memory had found him before the smell did. That scent, he murmured. Lena leaned closer. What scent? Isaiah's lips moved, but no answer came. His eyes closed again. The monitor continued its improved rhythm. Sloan stepped back, satisfied. He is stabilizing. Outside, Frost lowered himself to the ground, placing his chest against the sand. Owen knew the posture. It was not rest. The dog was listening, waiting through the false calm. For several minutes, nothing happened. The numbers held. The transfusion continued. Even Lena began to wonder whether the missing data was only what Sloan claimed it was. Then Frost lifted his head before any alarm sounded. His ears locked forward. His body rose in one smooth motion. Inside the tent, Isaiah's pulse skipped once. Then again. The steady tones became uneven. Lena looked up sharply. Frost was already standing at the gate, staring into the tent as if he had heard the danger arrive before the machine knew its name. The first alarm sounded softly, almost apologetically, as though the machine itself was uncertain. Lena turned toward the monitor and watched Isaiah's pulse fall out of rhythm. One beat came too soon. The next arrived late. His breathing, which had deepened only moments earlier, became shallow again. "Slow the line," she ordered. The corpsman reached for the clamp. Sloan stepped closer. "Do not stop it." "I said slow it." Lena's voice stayed calm, but the room obeyed her. The clear drops inside the tubing stretched farther apart. Isaiah's eyelids opened. This time there was no confusion in them. He looked first at Lena, then at the bag above him, and the muscles in his face tightened as if he had been pulled backward into a place he had spent 18 months trying to leave. "Frost," he whispered. "He knows." Lena leaned nearer. "Knows what?" Isaiah drew in a weak breath. The air passing through his nose carried antiseptic, dust, warm canvas, and beneath it all, something faintly sweet and metallic. It was not strong enough to name. It did not need to be. Memory had already named it for him. The sealed storage room. The white lights. Caleb Reed standing beside a cabinet with one hand against the wall. Frost frozen in place, one paw lifted, waiting for Isaiah to trust what no instrument could measure. "Same smell," Isaiah said. Sloan shook his head. "He is disoriented." Isaiah turned his eyes toward him. "No," the single word was thin, but it held. "I remember." Lena watched the monitor. "Remember what, Staff Sergeant?" His gaze drifted to the ceiling of the tent as the past moved across it. "Caleb." The name changed the room. Owen heard it through the radio outside and looked down at Frost. The dog was already standing, his body aligned with the tent entrance. "He warned me then," Isaiah continued. "I trusted the screen." His fingers moved beneath the blanket, searching for something at his chest. The dog tag he carried for Caleb was not there. A corpsman had placed it in a small metal tray beside the bed. Lena picked it up and set it in Isaiah's palm. His hand closed around the worn edge. "What happened to Corporal Reed?" she asked. Isaiah swallowed. "A leak. The detector said the room was safe. Frost said it was not." The monitor skipped again. Lena closed the clamp halfway. Sloan's comm finally cracked. "That event involved an entirely different compound. You know the report?" Owen asked over the radio. Silence followed. Lena looked at Sloan. "How do you know what was involved?" He glanced toward the tablet. "Project Haven reviewed earlier exposure incidents." "That is standard." "Then you knew Staff Sergeant Brooks had encountered a similar odor before." "Similar is not identical." "But you knew." Sloan did not answer. Outside, the desert wind rose hard enough to bow the canvas walls inward. Dust hissed across the ground. The security lights along the medical compound flickered once, then steadied. Frost lowered his nose toward the narrow gap beneath the tent flap. A thread of cold air escaped from inside, carrying the scent of the open medical case. He inhaled twice and pulled against the restraint. Owen tightened his grip. "Easy, boy." Frost did not struggle. He leaned forward with quiet force, eyes fixed on the entrance. Inside, Isaiah's pulse briefly steadied again. Sloan pointed at the monitor. "There." His body is adjusting. Lena watched the numbers rise by a fraction. It looked like improvement. It felt like a warning wearing the shape of hope. She checked Isaiah's pupils, then pressed her fingers against his wrist. His skin had grown cooler. "This is not recovery," she said. "It is fluctuation. Stopping treatment will cost him time. Continuing the wrong treatment will cost him more." Isaiah's eyes opened again. He turned his head toward the tent wall, toward the place where Frost waited on the other side. "He hears it," Isaiah murmured. Lena followed his gaze. "Here's what?" "Me." The answer was almost a breath. Outside, Frost's ears lifted before Isaiah's monitor. "Changed." The dog pulled once, sharply enough to draw Owen forward by half a step. At that same moment, the machine inside released a faster series of tones. Lena closed the clamp completely. Sloan reached toward it. "Open that line." "No." The wind struck the tent with a deep canvas snap. The lights dimmed. For 1 second, every screen went black, then returned beneath the red glow of emergency power. Frost stared through the entrance as the restraint strap twisted against his harness. Owen felt the dog gather himself, not in panic, but in decision. "Frost," he warned. The generator coughed somewhere beyond the medical compound. The lights flickered again. Inside, Isaiah tightened his hand around Caleb's tag and whispered into the darkening room. Listen to him this time. Then the power failed, the tent fell silent, and outside the gate, Frost began to pull free. Darkness swallowed the medical compound so completely that for one breath, every sound seemed to disappear with the lights. Then the desert rushed back in. Wind hammered the canvas. Sand hissed beneath the tent walls. Somewhere beyond the restricted gate, the backup generator turned once, failed, and fell silent again. Owen Tate tightened both hands around Frost's restraint, but the white German shepherd had already lowered his body and shifted his weight. There was no panic in him, no wild movement, only purpose. Stay, Owen said. Frost looked toward the tent. Inside, Lena reached for a battery lantern while one corpseman held the line closed and another checked Isaiah by touch. The red emergency strips along the floor flickered weakly, throwing low shadows across the treatment table. Pulse is irregular, the corpseman said. Breathing is shallow. Keep the compound stopped, Lena ordered. Sloane's voice came through the dark. You are making a mistake. Then let the mistake be mine. Outside, Frost pulled once. The restraint strap tightened, twisted, and slipped against the metal latch weakened by dust and years of use. Owen felt it give. Frost. The dog moved before the warning left his mouth. He passed through the inner gate, crossed the short stretch of concrete, and reached the tent entrance. In 3 silent strides, a guard stepped sideways to block him. Frost changed direction without slowing, slipped around the man, and pressed his shoulder through the loose canvas flap. No teeth, no growl, no harm, just a white shape entering the red darkness. Lena turned as Frost appeared beside the supply table. His coat caught the emergency light and glowed like snow beneath a warning flare. Sloane raised one hand. Get him out. Frost ignored him. He moved directly toward Isaiah, then stopped before reaching the bed. His nose lifted. One breath. A second. His head lowered. The dog's gaze followed the clear tubing from Isaiah's arm to the hanging bag. Lena saw the moment recognition settled into his body. His ears went still. His breathing stopped. Everybody stand back, she said. Frost stepped onto the lower rail of the treatment table, careful and controlled. He placed one front paw against Isaiah's chest, not pressing, only touching, as though confirming the man was still there. Then he nudged the tubing away from Isaiah's arm. The adhesive held. Frost tried again, gentler than anyone expected from an animal moving beneath alarms and shouting voices. Owen entered behind him, breathing hard. He is not trying to reach Isaiah, he said. He is trying to reach the line. Sloane moved toward the bag. Frost shifted between them. A low warning rolled through his chest. It was the first sound he had made since entering. Sloane stopped. Lena took the clamp in one hand and disconnected the tubing with the other. The loose end fell toward the floor. A single drop gathered at its tip. Frost watched it grow. When it struck the black mat, he recoiled 6 inches and lowered his head again. 2 breaths. 1 lifted paw. Silence. Lena stared at the drop. The battery lantern revealed nothing unusual. Clear fluid. Clean plastic. A sealed system that should have been safe. Yet the faint scent returned, sweet and metallic beneath the antiseptic air. Isaiah's fingers moved. His eyelids opened barely enough to show awareness. Frost turned toward him, but did not leave the line. Isaiah, Lena said. Can you hear me? His eyes found the dog first. Relief passed over his face, followed by effort. Not him, Isaiah whispered. His gaze shifted toward the hanging bag. That. Sloane shook his head. He is confused. Isaiah's fingers closed around Caleb's dog tag. Same smell. The words were weak, but clear. Frost lowered his head toward the spilled drop again. Lena reached for a sterile collection strip and touched it to the fluid. No one reconnects this line, she said. Sloane stepped closer. Commander, Project Haven is classified. You do not have authority to suspend it based on an animal response. Lena looked at Isaiah, then at Frost standing over the tubing like a sentry who had arrived at the last possible second. I have authority over my patient. The generator caught. Lights flashed back to life. Monitors restarted in a chorus of tones. Isaiah's pulse appeared on the screen, uneven but present. Lena opened the insulated case and removed a second bag from the same batch. Frost reacted before she brought it near him. His body stiffened. His eyes fixed on the seal. Owen felt the truth settle over the room. It was not one damaged line. It was the shipment. Lena turned the bag beneath the white light and saw a thin cloud of moisture trapped beneath the upper seam, too slight to notice unless someone was already looking for it. She checked the label, then the case, then the empty space in the transport log. 6 missing minutes. 6 minutes no one had wanted to explain. Frost stepped down from the table and remained beside Isaiah, his shoulder pressed against the bed frame. The alarms softened as Lena began ordinary supportive treatment. Sloane stood near the supply table, silent now. Outside, the wind continued across the Nevada flats, but inside the tent, something had changed. The dog had crossed every rule placed before him, not because he had forgotten his training, but because he remembered a promise the others had nearly forgotten. When the machines failed, when the records looked perfect, and when the room trusted what it could read, Frost trusted what he could smell. Lena sealed the disconnected line inside a clear evidence pouch and set it beneath the examination lamp. Under steady white light, the fluid still looked harmless. That was what made it frightening. No discoloration, no sediment, nothing a hurried medical team would question before trusting the label. Frost remained beside Isaiah's bed, his white shoulder touching the metal frame, while Owen guarded the entrance and watched Sloane with a stillness that needed no accusation. "Open the full transport record," Lena said. Sloane did not move. "The shipment is part of a protected program. A protected program nearly entered my patient through a compromised seal." "You do not know that." Lena lifted the second bag from the insulated case. Frost's ears moved forward. His nose tightened. One paw rose from the floor. "He knows enough for both of us." Sloane looked toward the door as if measuring the distance to it, then slowly entered a code into the tablet. A new screen appeared, filled with routes, batch numbers, storage times, and authorization marks. Lena searched the shipment identifier printed on the bag. The record showed departure from a California facility shortly after midnight, an air transfer to Nevada, then ground delivery to Blackridge. Between the airfield and the station, the refrigerated truck had stopped for 6 minutes beside a service building 20 miles west. The temperature data disappeared during that stop. When the readings returned, they showed perfect storage conditions. No gradual recovery. No warning. Just a clean line where the truth should have been. "Who stopped the truck?" Owen asked. Sloane kept his eyes on the screen. "A cooling alarm required inspection." "Then why remove the alarm from the log?" "Because the unit returned to range." Lena turned the bag beneath the light. Moisture had gathered inside the upper seam, where the plastic layers met. "How warm did it get?" Sloane said nothing. "How warm?" she repeated. His answer came quietly. "We do not know." The wind outside softened, leaving the tent with the faint buzz of restored electricity and Isaiah's uneven breathing. Owen looked at the row of containers near the supply table. How many bags were on that truck? Sloane's silence lasted too long. Lena returned to the manifest. Blackridge was only one destination. For matching, containers had been transferred before the truck arrived. One had gone north to a remote training range. 2 had been sent to mobile medical teams supporting exercises near the state line. The last had been routed to a forward station nearly 100 miles away. "They already left," Lena said. Owen stepped closer to the screen. "When?" 2 hours ago. Sloane finally looked up. "The bags are sealed. Even if there was a temporary temperature rise, most of the compound may still be stable." "Most is not a medical standard," Lena said. "It was designed to tolerate transport variation." "Then why hide the variation?" He had no answer for that. Frost lifted his head as a radio on the supply table began to crackle. A distant voice requested confirmation from Blackridge Medical Command. The signal broke beneath static, then returned. "We have one patient being prepared for emergency infusion. Confirm Haven batch clearance." Everyone in the tent went still. Lena reached for the radio. Sloane placed his hand over it. "If you issue an unverified alert, the entire program will be suspended." Lena looked down at his hand until he removed it. "A suspension can be reversed." Her eyes shifted toward Isaiah. "A life cannot." She raised the radio. "This is Commander Lena Mercer at Blackridge. Stop all use of Project Haven batch number 7 for Charlie. Do not open any container. Quarantine every bag and confirm receipt." Static answered first. Then the distant medic returned, his voice sharper. "Blackridge, the line is already prepared. Disconnect it now." A pause. "Understood." Lena sent the same warning through the emergency medical channel, then ordered Owen to notify every destination on the manifest. One by one, responses came back. The Northern Range had not opened its case. The first mobile team had begun inspection but had not connected a line. The second team was unreachable beneath the storm interference. The forward station reported 3 patients waiting and 1 bag already hanging beside a bed. Lena pressed the transmit button harder. Remove it before use. The answer dissolved into static. Frost left Isaiah's side and walked toward the radio, ears high, as though the voices themselves carried the scent of danger across the desert. Owen tried the channel again. Nothing. Sloan stood near the insulated cases, the confidence gone from his face. "There is a satellite terminal in command operations," he said. "Then use it," Lena replied. Owen ran from the tent. Sloan followed after one brief hesitation. Lena stayed with Isaiah, replacing the experimental compound with standard fluids and a carefully matched blood supply from the station reserve. His pulse remained fragile, but it no longer fell with each passing minute. Frost returned to the bed and rested his chin beside Isaiah's hand. The worn tag belonging to Caleb Reed lay within Isaiah's fingers, catching the light whenever they moved. 10 minutes later, Owen's voice came through the radio. "All stations confirmed. Every bag is isolated." The forward team disconnected theirs before the first drop entered the line. Lena closed her eyes for one breath. Around the desert, people who would never know Frost's name had been spared by the warning of a dog they had never seen. Isaiah's hand shifted weakly and touched the white fur beside him. Frost did not move. He only watched the sealed medical cases with quiet amber eyes, standing guard over a danger that no longer had anywhere left to hide. By sunrise, the storm had moved east, leaving Blackridge beneath a sky washed pale gold and blue. The desert looked clean from a distance, though sand still gathered against the tires of the medical trucks and along the seams of the canvas tents. Inside the treatment area, the emergency lights had been turned off. Natural light entered through a narrow opening near the roof and rested across Isaiah Brooks's face. His breathing had steadied during the night. The standard transfusion had done what the experimental compound had failed to do, and the numbers on the monitor no longer fell whenever Lena looked away. Frost remained beside the bed, asleep at last, his white body curled close enough that one ear touched the metal frame. Even in sleep, he faced the sealed medical cases across the room. Owen Tate stood near the entrance with 2 investigators from Military Medical Command. They photographed the bags, collected the transport records, and placed every container beneath formal quarantine. No one spoke loudly. The room had the quiet of a chapel after a difficult prayer. Victor Sloan waited outside under guard, his badge removed, his access suspended. He had not poisoned anyone. That truth mattered. So did the truth that followed it. He had known the refrigeration system failed. He had known the temperature record could not be trusted. He had ordered the missing 6 minutes erased because Project Haven was scheduled for final review, and one failed shipment could have delayed the program for years. He had told himself the compound was probably safe. He had told himself the risk was small. He had told himself that important work sometimes required confidence. By morning, those explanations sounded smaller than the lives they had nearly touched. Commander Lena Mercer entered with a paper cup of coffee and found Isaiah awake. His eyes were tired, but clear. "How long?" he asked. "You have been stable for 6 hours." His gaze moved toward Frost. The dog sensed it before Isaiah called his name. His eyes opened, and he rose without hurry, placing his front paws beside the bed. Isaiah reached down and rested one hand against the thick white fur along his neck. Did he get in trouble? Lena looked toward the torn restraint strap on the supply table. He violated several orders, crossed a restricted barrier, interrupted a classified procedure, and refused to leave when instructed. Isaiah's mouth lifted at one corner. "That sounds serious. It also saved your life and stopped 4 other medical teams from using the same batch." Isaiah's expression changed. He looked at Frost for a long moment. "For teams, every shipment was recovered before use." Lena set the coffee aside. The laboratory confirmed damage along the upper seals. Heat exposure created a trace chemical change. It was too slight for the field scanners, but not too slight for him. Frost leaned closer until his nose touched Isaiah's wrist. Isaiah closed his eyes. For a moment, Lena thought he had fallen asleep again. Then he opened his hand. Caleb Reed's worn dog tag rested in his palm. The metal had been polished by years of being carried, held, and remembered. I heard the signal 18 months ago, Isaiah said. I just trusted the wrong thing. Lena did not answer. There were apologies that needed words, and there were apologies too old for language. Isaiah unhooked the small ring from the chain and called Owen closer. Help me with this. Owen knelt beside Frost and carefully attached Caleb's tag to the canine's collar. The metal settled against the white fur with a soft click. Frost looked down at the new weight, then back at Isaiah. He should have worn it before me, Isaiah whispered. Owen shook his head. Caleb would say the dog earned it. Later that morning, Isaiah was cleared to leave the tent in a wheelchair. He protested once, then accepted it when Frost placed himself beside the right wheel and refused to move until Isaiah sat down. Outside, Marines had gathered along the path without being ordered. No ceremony had been planned. No speech had been written. As Isaiah passed, men and women simply stepped aside and watched the white German shepherd walk beside him. Some nodded. One young corpsman pressed a hand briefly against his heart. Near the outer gate, Sloan stood between two officials preparing to escort him from the station. He looked toward Isaiah, then toward Frost. Whatever defense he had prepared disappeared before he spoke. I believe the data, he said. Isaiah studied him. The morning wind moved softly through the fence. So did I once. Sloan lowered his eyes. Isaiah did not offer forgiveness, and he did not offer anger. He allowed the truth to remain between them, quiet and complete. Beyond the gate, the desert opened for miles beneath the new sun. Owen released the brake on the wheelchair, but Isaiah stopped him. He placed both feet carefully on the ground and stood. His legs trembled. Frost moved close, shoulder against his knee. Isaiah rested one hand on the harness and took a step, then another. Caleb's tag touched the collar with each movement. A small silver sound carried into the morning. I heard you this time, Isaiah said. Frost looked up at him, amber eyes calm beneath the light. Together they walked toward the rising sun, slowly, without applause, while the station behind them returned to duty. Maybe Frost had remembered the scent. Maybe training had guided him through the dark. Or maybe Mercy had found the only faithful heart in Blackridge that did not need permission to act.